So based on the goals the team identified in the pilot phase, in what areas of the CAR framework has your school experienced growth? Okay.
Okay, so our school, based on the rubric, we realized that the climate and culture has definitely shifted. Our leadership responsibility has shifted, and definitely meeting with our PLCs. I know in the beginning, we were all concerned about PLCs. So, can we all meet at the same time? How's it going to work? Are we gonna have to stay after school and do this? Somehow we just worked it out with our schedules. All of the teachers meet on a weekly basis, multiple times a week, and they have conversations about the teaching and learning styles, different materials to use in the classroom, student scores, just conversations about everything, anything that concerns them. So we were all concerned, are we going to get time to meet with each other? And it's happening this year. So it definitely has changed the way our school is moving. So it's moving to a positive direction. Is there anything? Sure.
I think that based on how we've been moving along with our PLCs, our conversations are starting to change. I think as team leaders, we're starting to become more comfortable. Our group is becoming more comfortable with the shift. Everything's pretty much based on teaching and learning, so we're trying to delve more into that and the complexity of it all. So I think that we're starting to see that, especially come this year, because now we've been through some of the training, and our staff members have been working with us. So it's made it a lot easier for us to sit and work with one another, and we've kind of established our roles in our groups, and we've become comfortable with those roles and voicing our opinions and giving each other suggestions and being respectful of one another, and just kind of working well together and sharing the same beliefs, especially per grade level. So I think that we've shown a lot of growth in the last few months in those areas.
As the building leader, I think the most difficult challenge I had was the time issue. So I made sure to schedule common planning time in order for it to work across the building, which was an extremely difficult task because it happens during when their students go to preparation, to go to special areas. So it took me a month during the summer, and hopefully no change in classes, where it happened this year, where I was supposed to have 3 Ks, and I went down to 2, and I went up to 4 second grades, and that really throws a wrench, but I was able to straighten that out. What I found more interesting was being in Washington School for so many years, and these women have been with me, I would say, for at least almost 10 years now, was the change that the pilot made us change our conversations in a PLC. Before, the PLC conversations were vague. They were like the hot topic of what happened that day, or who bothered somebody, or a union problem. It was never focused on what it was supposed to be focused. And the BOLM and the car conversations started to tie it all together, which was really interesting because there were more discussions on teaching and learning going on, and they got to see, it was a better conversation that went on between different grade levels. And the switch, when Joelle decided to apply for the Title I job, I said, what better than somebody who's in first grade to see what goes on in the rest of the building as part of the leadership team. Dynamic first grade teacher, broke my heart to take her out of that classroom, but for the good of the order of the whole school, she would get a really great idea of what's going on and bring those conversations back to different levels. Title I is assigned, they could pick what grade level they could PLC with. They usually stick with one grade level. It's usually 3rd, 4th, or 5th, since that impacts the assessments that go on. So throughout these conversations and through a lot of discussion. Now, Washington School, and I'm sure they'll tell you, in fact, we have a very nice, we have a really great climate and culture. Except after they started to meet, they started to come forward. This gave them courage to come forward and say, there are certain things that have to be fixed. So could you explain what came up in your conversations and then was brought back to me?
I think mainly we had discussed wanting to change somewhat like our mission statement throughout the building, and just kind of working together to come up with our own mission statement. one that's conducive in all grade levels, one that we can work collaboratively on. So that was something that we really realized had to be done. And especially for this upcoming school year, we wanted to start off the year doing so. So we're still working on that, but that's something that we came up with together, and just realized that, we need something that works throughout the building, something that the kids will be familiar with and completely understand, as well as the staff.
Very good. All right, so let's move on to the next question. So while this was certainly reflected in your initial discussion, how has growth influenced other areas of the CAR vision, right? The CAR vision is representative of multiple areas, right? Culture, assessment, and so forth. And maybe for this, we could try to engage in a conversation within the team. I know it's a little bit awkward, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Reality TV. So basically, there were many different areas that have changed. So first thing, we moved into unit planning instead of just weekly lesson plans. So that was one of the changes. Standard-based instruction is another. And then also going back to what Chrissy said, the student behavior, we realized that the students need to be on the same page all the time with behavior in our schools. So we decided to start the year off.
Let's talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk about it.
Well, we all got together, decided to do unit plans. So we did one we started, because it's a lot of work, we started for the first marking period, reading and math. And we unpacked the standards, we discussed curriculum, we have asked essential questions, we have taken our data, analyzed it, then moved forward in terms of what we're going to do for reading and math. We have picked pre-assessments, common pre-assessments, formative and summative, and pretty much can move forward. And I feel, or at least I think all of us feel, that it's just so much easier knowing that you have this planned out for the whole marking period. It's there, it's for you to keep on looking at it. But it's nice to know that, especially in the 4th grade, and I know 5th grade and 3rd grade as well, that we have, we all are doing the same thing. We all have the same goals. We're all talking about the same standards.
We came together to do this, so that was something. You're doing it nice.
I'm joining, because my question is to show process, and I think that's what we're talking about here. You started out targeting as your goal the development of true PLCs,
Yes.
right? So I'm really curious, because I saw this play out in my own schools where I was a leader. When you began that journey, what other parts of the map were also, of the CAR framework, were also impacted? Because I think it's important to remember that it is a journey, but you don't just, when you start here, you do it with a view of how can I strengthen the other pieces too. So I heard some of that, but if you sit back for a minute and think about it, what other things, you didn't even intend for it to happen, but it started to take off.
I think a lot of our assessment conversations kind of came into play during this time. Like, how are we going to assess, the different types of assessment, having more complex assessments, and thinking about the kids doing things that work well with all the different needs that they have.
Materials.
The materials, right, speaking, listening. I think it was a good opportunity for all of us to kind of come together with our shared ideas and the different groups and levels that we have to work together to come up with various forms of assessment.
And what I learned from the conversations was there had to be a discussion on assessment, because it wasn't just for a grade, it was collecting data. And that was a change in how we looked at things in the building, because it was always, how many grades do I need for that marking period? We're not there to fulfill a list for a marking period. We're there to see how our students are
We
teaching
realized
and learning.
it was okay to assess even if it's not a grade for the grade book. You could assess and see where the kids are, get some data from that, so.
Regarding the amount of grades in the grade book, we have a problem in our building as far as there is no norm. So are the grades being skewed moving forward when they go to middle school? Because some teachers are using 2 assessments and a homework grade, and other teachers are putting 25 grades in through the marking period.
Right.
So, not that there needs to be.
That's where like the PLC conversation I think needs to come in.
Right, because you're doing the pre-assessment, and then you're doing the instruction, and then you're doing the post-assessment to see the difference in data, but also having that commonality through everyone, where if you're doing different things, for instance, there was someone on my team where we gave the same assessment, but we graded it differently. So our scores were skewed because I used the grading rubric as far as what was in the lesson, and she used her own. So all of our grades became skewed because of that.
So, yeah, that's something that you have to meet with, who's on your team and say, how are we going to grade this together? Can we come up with a common grading method for this test? Because if I'm grading it this way, counting so many, points or questions, we're going to have a difference in our data here. So you kind of have to have that conversation with that person.
And it's up to the building leader to make sure that, I'm allowed through contract to have one 90-minute meeting a month with my staff. So when the PLCs come together and they do Google Docs, and I look at their docs, and I see the conversations and what the focus is, at that meeting, that's when we'll talk about grading between grade levels, so there's a common language, a common understanding of what has to be, what has to work, so it's not skewed. So you don't have, somebody throwing something in for a grade booster or something like that. So that's an outgrowth of a PLC conversation.
Are we ready to move on to the next question? Okay, so car is the vehicle for conversations in your school. What impact have the conversations had in your school? What impact have the conversations had on teaching and learning and your school goals? Okay, so impact have the conversations had in your school, and what impact have the conversations had on teaching and learning in your school goals? Okay.
So, obviously, starting with our PLCs, we meet on a weekly basis, so that is a definite a shift from last year, where we would hope to meet, or have those conversations, but now it's a deeper conversation. We're realizing that sometimes the materials that are given to us in the district, you need to reach further and get other materials. So we use readworks.org, and we use a lot of different materials. And then we also realize that the scores, the students' scores, what are we going to do to drive their scores a little higher? So we need to look at each question on PARCC testing, and we need to see where they're going wrong or what they need to strengthen. And I know a big thing this year is everything needs evidence. So we need to show evidence. So the children now have that word in their vocabulary. They know what that is, and they know how to go back and look for evidence in their work.
You mentioned how your mission statement had changed throughout the process. I'm interested in hearing a little more about those conversations and where'd you start and how'd you change gears?
Yeah, I think that we kind of came up with a goal together, and we sat and came up with our norms that we wanted for our PLCs and
The mission statement.
oh, the mission statement, I'm sorry.
The mission statement was basically that every student should learn and that common mission statement. They looked at it and they really said they really had nothing to do with that. So they deconstructed it with value statements and core values, which we're still in a process because we started it last year. And it wasn't a race to get a mission statement done. We're still not done having the conversation.
We almost didn't even know our own mission statement in the beginning, so we realized we need to have a conversation about that. And we said, what is our mission statement? We've been here almost 10 years.
Yeah.
What is our school mission statement?
Was that a messy conversation?
It wasn't. I think we kind of all were on the same page with it. We just knew that it needed to be updated and changed, and students needed to fully understand what the mission statement is.
just because it was there, it doesn't mean that it was right, it needed to be changed. So we weren't afraid to kind of look at it and say like, oh,
We weren't afraid to look at it and I hate the microphone. We weren't afraid to look at it and say it needs to change, so we need to kind of talk about it. Don't be afraid to talk about it.
That's great.
Can you talk about your process for unpacking the standards? Earlier when you mentioned that you unpacked the standards and you were giving the list of other accomplishments that you had, it sounded as though unpacking the standards was like completed, done. So can you talk about that process in your district or in your school?
I mean, it's pretty much an ongoing process. I think we've been sitting in our PLCs talking about it. We had a PLC conversation last week about unpacking our standards. Where do we want to go? How are the standards going to mirror what they're going to be doing? But it's a process. I mean, we pretty much like broke it apart last year too. What standards are we focusing on for the first marking period in math and reading? And how is that going to drive our instruction? And then we unpacked those and worked through those and found essential questions and assessments that worked on what we were focusing on for that. And now our next is going to move on to the second marking period. So it's like a work in progress because there's so many and it takes so much time. So we figured if we just hone in on the ones that we think, based on our data, that we're going to do first, and then we're going to retest, and then based on that data, then we're going to move forward. And so it's like steps.
So did the data drive those conversations?
Yes, 100%. There we took a look at our park scores too, and we looked at the standards that we really need to focus on, that they were weak in. So that data that we kind of picked apart and dissected, that data is driving our instruction for this year for the students.
Thank you, Jay.
Just wanted to follow up with Tanya's question. The curriculum is a critical part of this, I should say teaching and learning is a critical part of all of this. How did the district's curriculum impact on your discussions about the standards and then moving from the lesson plans to the unit plans? Is there a district curriculum?
Yes.
Explain how that district could believe what happens with our children.
Okay, so everybody in our district, we get the same, here, this is what you're doing this year. This is the reading, this is the math, this is, they make up a test, or we go on study island, this is what we want you to do for the assessments. And we look at it, but then we choose to do pretty much our own thing because, yeah, it's all nice and great, but it's not based on our data. I mean, you can't just put something together and say this is what you should do, but that might not be good for the students that are staring me in the face for fourth grade this year. So we kind of, it's not that we ignore it, but we might use some of it, but it's not like the end-all be-all of what we're going to do for that particular marking period or year.
And if I could jump in, being part of the pilot has strengthened our voice because we're doing this work, we're sharing it with the curriculum leaders in the district and saying, what you have is fine, but it's not universal. It has to attach itself to the people who are standing in front of the rooms, the whole culture, the whole building. So we've been able to move things along through the pilot with the curriculum coordinators for the betterment of the rest of the district. It's baby steps, because you don't want to step, you have to be very careful whose toes you step on. To be entirely honest here, I'm saying, but I think when you get it down, it's for the children, and they've been, I don't know, when they have grade level meetings, I don't know, they know, they're the voices, and they know it, and it's they have risen to the top and get called upon because this conversation going on, and people ask, when they usually ask me, how do you know all this, what do you think?
Yeah.
We talk about it.
Yeah. Also, we're not afraid, like Mr. Croft was saying, maybe in the past we were afraid to kind of challenge it, and we just accepted the, the assessments. Now we kind of are looking at it and saying, this isn't right for our school, for our kids, so we bring it forward to Mr. Crothall, we talk about it at the meeting, so we're not afraid to challenge it.
And we had the answers to the why, you know what I mean? Because that's always the thing, like, if you want me to do this, well, explain to me why. Is this based on scores or data, or there has to be a reason why you're teaching what you're teaching? And I feel like we have that answer based on our unit planning and what we've mapped out, and they don't always have a why.
Do you find that your colleagues are responding positively to the perspective you bring into those discussions? Are they receptive? Has that been a process as well?
Other teachers from other schools in our district are like, wow, that makes so much sense, you know? And I'm like, yeah.
You're not being ostracized.
No, if anything, they look to us and then I feel badly because I don't want to like be like
More like
throwing this
how
at
we
them.
have it,
But
too.
at the
Yeah.
same time, I feel like, you know, they should know that there's options and that they shouldn't always think that this is what, you know, that they have to do what's thrown at them. That yes, you look at it, but then if you have the answer to the why you're doing it in your classroom, you should be okay.
I think we broke through the barrier that the curriculum is not a book. It's not a book series that was bought or something supplemental. It's what's going to work for the teaching and learning that's going on. You're building a conversation.
Well, it sounds like in your district, in your school, the curriculum is a living document.
Yes.
You've been able to sort of reflect as a PLC, as teachers in the school, about what works and what doesn't. I'm thinking that there are other schools in the room that are wrestling with this very same issue. What you are mandated to teach as part of the district curriculum or school curriculum versus what you believe should be taught based on the needs and strengths of your students. So thank you for that.
So student learning was obviously our center right in the middle. Then we realized that PLCs needed to. So you said that the formative and some assessments.
So explain to them,
Okay, so we would put our PLCs in the climate for learning. Our student learning, of course, would be in the middle, and that would drive everything. And then we looked at our standards, which would also probably go with shared leadership, considering we're unpacking them together. Effective instruction would go with probably communication and expectations as well as shared leadership. We'll put it over there. Our formative and summative assessments, that's something we discussed in our PLCs, but it would go with shared leadership, probably also expectations as well. Yeah, what we're expecting from them and from ourselves to develop.